In the name of God, from whom every good gift comes. Amen. Please be seated. Today in our gospel, we have the familiar parable of the talents, where a rich man entrusts to his servants each a designated amount. 2 of the servants earn 100% returns by trading with the funds, but the 3rd servant hides the money in the ground and earns nothing. The rich man returns, rewards the 2 who made money, but severely punishes the servant who did nothing. So there are 3 points I want to raise up about this parable. First, the meaning of this parable extends far beyond financial investments. It's really too bad. This would be a great parable to focus on, money, on this last official Sunday of our stewardship pilgrimage. But the truth is, this parable is not just about money. It is about the variety of gifts God gives to each of us. Gifts God calls us to use in serving God and others. Like the 3 servants, we do not have gifts of the same degree. The return God expects of us is commensurate with the gifts we have been given. The servant who received 1 talent was not condemned for failing to reach the 5-talent goal. He was condemned because he did nothing with the talent he was given. And thus, God's message to us is that it is not acceptable to God for us to hide our gifts away, putting them under a bushel where we can ignore them, where they are of no use to anyone. God calls us to use the gifts we are given and be good stewards of them so we can be a blessing to others, and the value of what we do multiplies. Second, what are some of the gifts God gives to us each? These gifts can include skills, abilities, family connections, social and political positions, education, experiences in a wide variety of vocations, and much more. So this is not a trick question, but can you think of some of the gifts you have? Anybody want to throw one out?
Singing.
Huh?
Singing.
Singing?
I can do this like cool bird thing.
Say again?
I can go like,
Can't hear you.
it's like
What does he say?
bird calls.
Okay. Thank you. Getting old here, you got to speak up. Anybody else? Preaching. Okay. Well, the bottom line is all of us have at least 1 gift. And the bottom line is the point of the parable is that we are to use whatever we have been given for God's purposes. The severe consequences to the unproductive servant proclaim to us that we are to invest our very lives, and not waste them. Third, and yet this parable does concern money. That was what the talent was in Jesus' day. The original hearers would have understood this. They would not have confused the word talent as referring mainly to skills or abilities. And so to skip over this fact would not be staying true to yet another aspect of the parable. And so what does this parable say to us monetarily? Well, it depicts investing, not hoarding, as one scholar writes, as a godly thing to do if it accomplishes godly purposes in a godly manner. The master praises the 2 trustworthy servants with the words, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave," to basically emulate this point. So bottom line, we should not only invest our skills and abilities, but also our wealth and resources in the service of God's kingdom and in the service of others, especially those who are in much need. And we should do so willingly, with gladness and joy. It is a privilege to be entrusted by God with talents, resources, and opportunities to work towards God's purposes in the world. It is a privilege. And if we seize these varied opportunities, we will take our place among all the faithful, trustworthy servants of God, no matter how big or small our accomplishments may seem. Now, when I look around Ascension, I see people seizing the opportunities to work for God's purposes everywhere. Our Sunday school teachers who are teaching our youth and children are fulfilling this parable. Our other teachers, such as those leading us in conversations on race, are fulfilling this parable. Our Tending Our Soil team, who are bringing us into a new digital era so we can reach more people and invite them into our community, are fulfilling this parable. Those who serve our street community, getting up at the crack of dawn or preparing the homeless packets, are fulfilling this parable. The volunteers who serve at Tommy's Pantry, ministering to the food insecure, and those who contribute to Shepherd's Table are fulfilling this parable. All who make our worship services happen, the musicians, the choir, the live stream team, the altar guild, those who serve on the altar in any capacity, our ushers, our counters, our Sunday wardens, our coffee hour hosts, our bulletin preparer and bulletin copiers, the list is endless, are fulfilling this parable. The carpenters, Steve, Chuck, Letitia, whoever, who are constructing our indoor columbarium. Go look at it, folks, it's beautiful. The gardeners and mowers, the people who do odd jobs, who take care of our buildings and grounds, are fulfilling this parable. And each of you and your families who share your financial resources with pledges and other kinds of monetary gifts to support this spiritual home are fulfilling this parable. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So I want to close with a personal story about someone who at first felt like she had no gifts, nothing worthy to offer to God or to anyone else for that matter. My Aunt Jean, my mother's older sister, had a very rough start to life. She was born in 1921 into a poor family. My grandfather worked 3 jobs to just keep food on the table and a roof over the heads of my grandmother and their 5 children. My mother was one of them. These were the Depression years, and so you can imagine how hard life was for those of little means during this time. My Aunt Jean got pregnant in her mid-teens. No one knows to this day whether her pregnancy was the result of a consensual act or not. The shame and indignity she suffered while pregnant was horrible. She was rejected by her peers and her teachers. She was kicked out of high school and was shipped off to the Florence Crittenden home in D.C. It was a home for unwed mothers for the rest of her pregnancy. My grandparents forced her to give up her son for adoption, and she mourned this loss to the day she died. But she supported her son financially the best she could, giving over what little money she had to his adoptive family. Sadly, she never had any more children. She married and divorced 2 men, both of whom physically and emotionally abused her. She moved back home with my grandfather and grandmother, and at some point in her late 30s, my Aunt Jean began to discover her creativity. She had always loved to draw, and she loved taking pictures. That's her camera. She scrimped and saved to finally buy herself a state-of-the-art camera, an Olympus, which was not a cheap camera in the 1950s. The quality, beauty, and eye she had for photography landed her a job at one of the most premier photograph studios in Washington, D.C. at the time. For the next 40-plus years, her reputation grew, and she had the privilege of taking photographs of politicians like Mayor Washington, entertainers such as Dionne Warwick and the Temptations, and creators such as Jim Henson of the Muppets. And she also took beautiful photographs of ordinary folks like family groups, Germans, Italians, African Americans, etc. And guess what, folks? I inherited all of these original black and white photos. But she also had another gift, a very unusual one at the time. She was able to take black and white photos and paint them, bringing them to life in vibrant color. People flocked to her for this very unique gift. My Aunt Jean never remarried. She lived with my grandparents and took care of my grandmother after my grandfather died for many, many years. She used her financial resources to support my grandmother and her Church of the Redeemer in Bethesda. She continued to support her son, now an adult, in any way she could. And she was very generous with her nieces and nephews. She was always very supportive of me, especially when I came out. Her comment, "Great, who's the lucky woman?" And in the end, she was able to recognize that she had utilized God's artistic gift to her, capturing forever the beloved images of people who would live on in the memories and lives of their descendants forever. She did die at peace. She did die at peace, and I miss her dearly to this day. My friends, know that God has endowed you with many unique gifts, varied gifts. Don't hide them away. Use them to serve God and God's people. Don't worry about whether you feel they are great or small. All are worthy, all are important, and all have an impact on others, impacts that you may never know about. Do all that you can with your gifts, skills, abilities, resources, so that when you stand face to face with God, you will hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Amen.